Welcome to Two Dads, One Controller, your go-to podcast for video games, movies, and comics. Join us as we take our final leap of faith into our three-part series of Assassin's Creed. I'm here with my co-host Holden, and we will continue where we left off last week with Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Two dads playing late in the night, video games shine neon lights, control the world, saving the day, superheroes come out to play.
All right, Chris, so last week we ended with Valhalla. We talked a little bit about it, but since we wrapped our recording last week, I've actually doubled my time in Valhalla, and I've got to say I might have to redact some of the things I said. So, like, for example, I don't know how I got into the DLC. Like, I just accepted a mission, and it put me in Asgard, and then you go through this, and I've probably spent 10 hours in this one DLC. I think it's called the Lost Missions or something. But you go in and you're playing as Odin, and you go into hell and you're looking for his son, Baldur, that died. And so it's kind of like you make it as far as you can in this world, and then it's like a progression, and then when you die you restart. And my kind of impression of that, and it's good. I mean, I'm surprised because I die a lot, and it's new dialogue every time you enter a fight. It's new developments, and like, Thor comes in at one point, and there's like new armors, and you like this one piece has like changed my mind of Valhalla. I don't know if in your playthrough if you ever made it to that point or had played that DLC yet.
No, I haven't. I'm still in the first area. I've been doing a lot of exploration right now. So I haven't even headed up north to go talk to the king after you avenge your father's honor.
I don't even know if because I have played this, like I've said, I've had it on PC, Xbox, and I've had it on PlayStation like 2 separate times, like with a different account. So I've started this game multiple times over the last, it's been out for years at this point, and playing through it kind of with fresh set of eyes, I think the animations are smooth, like when it comes to rolling, and like it doesn't feel like a character, like you feel the weight when you run and armor and all that kind of in those animations and the way that he moves. Where they dropped the ball for me is when they did like whatever the cloth physics, the animations, like you wear a cape, but it's the most PlayStation 3 thing I've ever seen. Like you have a game that came out in 2009, Batman Arkham Asylum, where one guy spent like 2 or 3 years animating this cape, and it looks great. It responds accurately to everything, and this is a 2009 game. And then you have this generation game, and don't give him a cape and this sounds so like picky, and because it is, and this is my pet peeve with a lot of games, is like if I'm forced to stare at this character's back for 60 to 80 hours to do like a complete 100% playthrough, like don't have it so that it looks like a piece of cardboard. I'm kind of ranting on this, like I'm dying on this hill, but what are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, I can see you want to enjoy, you want to see the effort that they put into the animation of the character. And I see you don't see that. I don't pay that much attention to the cape animations. I'm more of like the environmental ground type animation. The one thing I love in the animation area is the snow. I don't know.
They did do a good job with the snow. I did notice that the other day. That was well done. Like you assassinate an enemy and there's a little snow print of them. And nowadays everyone compares this gen games to Red Dead 2, which it's kind of a tall order because you think of the development time of Red Dead versus like an Assassin's game that gets turned out every other year. It's a big ask to kind of hold those in the same regard.
Yeah, I think Red Dead gets a couple years to develop. But yeah, Assassin's Creed comes out with one probably every year. But no, I'm a big fan of ground animations because that's really tricky. I did a little bit of game development for a while and trying to get grass to move, like just one blade. It's really difficult. And how they do it with the snow, the fact that you can run around in a circle in an entire area and the snow doesn't puff back up like randomly. Because a lot of older games, when you're doing ground animations, so for those who don't know, if most games to save rendering time, it's the field of view is rendered, and if like in the background it's nothing, and then it will render back when you start to turn around. And sometimes when that happens, your previous movements erase because the code's just like, oh shoot, hey, I didn't know you were there. There's like a array buffer. And in this one, I ran around in circles for 30 minutes trying to figure out where is the buffer for this array of the snow path to disappear. And it didn't go away. I'm really impressed with that. And that by far is one of my favorite things in the game is they spent time on the ground and environmental animation.
But speaking of like the environmental stuff, you get into, and I have like also part two to what you were just saying with loading the water. You get in the water and you can just tell it's not like they coated the clothes to be wet. You can see it's just a layer on top of the clothes of like running water coming off of it. And I want to say, like, you step in the water, if you're like waist deep, your whole clothes are wet. Like, it's kind of like a laziness thing. But the part two for your thing is that, and I didn't notice, a lot of games now, like or back then, you had to go through, like, you go through a door into a new building, and you had to wait for the loading screen, right? And now games hide the loading screens. And now I think about this every time because God of War has it, Spider-Man has it, Assassin's Creed has it. When you're going through like between two, it's like
You talking about
you're
the symbol that comes up in the bottom right or top right of the game?
you're like squeezing through a tight space and you can only go slow. That's the only speed. And you're like going through this long kind of tunnel to get to the next, part of the map. Like that's a loading screen in itself. It's loading what's on the other side of that. Because like I said, God of War does it, and now I think about it every time I go into, you know what I'm talking about? It'll be like a rock wall with like a little slit in it, and you'll turn sideways to kind of maneuver through it.
Yeah, yep, I know what you're talking about. It's like an environmental scene where you have to. It just takes you a really long time to go through that. Yep.
But I don't have a problem with. I mean, Jedi Survivor does it. Like I don't have a problem with it. Like it's better, I guess, than a loading screen.
Yeah, I think it's more dynamic. There's other ways to do it because you can load scenes as you're going closer to the area. You don't have to like load each section at a time.
Yeah, and this game, like in my playthrough, I got to Mjolnir, which is the hammer Thor uses. That started to be my favorite weapon. I was always hoping because it was random what the vendors would have in each playthrough. Eventually, I'll probably Google or set out to see where I can find it in the real world outside of Asgard because I love the weapon. I love the buffs that weapon has, but I've kind of come around on Valhalla. It doesn't crack my top three, but I think that it is a good game. But getting into Mirage real quick, Chris, I know you hadn't had a chance to play this one yet. This one's going to go down as one that people easily forget, I think. It's set in the 9th century Baghdad during the Islamic Golden Age. It follows the journey of Basim, who showed up in another Assassin's Creed game as like an older version of himself. I want to say it was an Odyssey, but he's a cunning street thief who rises to become a master assassin. And in this game, it returns to its roots, focusing on like stealth, parkour, and assassinations. Has a smaller narrative-driven experience, and then players it's a very dense environment you're navigating with a lot of like political intrigue, uncovering secret ties to the hidden ones, and struggle against the order of the ancients. It emphasizes it's a streamlined classic Assassin's Creed's gameplay style, kind of reminiscent of the early titles in the franchise. I'll kind of go into my pros are just it returns to the series roots. Parkour, assassinations, smaller, more focused map, which I've complained about that in the previous few games. It's an engaging setting, streamlined gameplay, compelling protagonist, and then obviously modern visuals and performance. My cons are it's a lack of innovation, shorter length story. It's a predictable story, and it's less emphasis on open world exploration. I don't mind a little bit of exploration, or like if it's an intriguing world. Like I got into Valhalla and I started to enjoy it more, but Mirage just seemed like a how do I put this? Like a filler, like when you're watching anime or something, and there's like a filler episode that has nothing to do with anything. That's how this feels. So I didn't want to spend too much time talking about this game, but
So for someone like me that hasn't played it, you probably wouldn't recommend spending time on it.
no, if I'm recommending Assassin's Creed games, this doesn't come up on my list. The only it'd be recency bias if I ever told you to play it. To play it for the sake of playing all the games. That's the only reason I would recommend someone play it.
Okay, makes sense. So you mentioned some of the top threes, and this one probably is not up there. Going over what we reviewed over all the Assassin's Creed games over these last couple weeks, what are your top three? And why are they your top three?
I'll go with. I'm not going to talk about these two too much, but these are my honorable mentions. Would be Syndicate and Unity. I think once Unity was fleshed out, I just loved the parkour animations, how smooth the transitions were, and it just made the game more fun to transit across the map. I think Unity was great. Syndicate, its main downfall was boring story. I liked the gameplay of it. I liked the aspect of you're building your own gang. And each character had a specialty, right? Jacob was melee. Like if I was going into a fight, that's who I wanted. If I needed stealth, I would use Evie, his sister, Fry, because that was and I built them out as such, like with their progressions. So that's why I really liked that game. But I'll go into my number 3 is Assassin's Creed 2. So that kind of kicked it off for me. Like there was a point, I think I was in high school when these games started coming out. But that was when, because I played the first one, I was waiting for the release of the second one. It'd been 2 years. It started with, Ezio. It's a great story. I haven't played this game in over a decade. But if I recall right, like you see your family is like hung in this like the city square or whatever, and it kind of fleshes out that story of Desmond before they completely ruin it, and it was just made you excited for the future. And then for that to be the predecessor to Brotherhood, which was a great game as well, it just nostalgia wise holds a place in my heart. But what are your thoughts on Assassin's Creed 2? And then I'm curious to know what you had for your number 3.
So Assassin's Creed 2, I think it was great. It was a great introduction to the series after 1, and it got you more invested in the game. Wasn't really my top 3 because I'm a big fan of graphics and environmental animation, so I really look at games like that. So mine for my 3rd is Valhalla. And the reason why is they spend a lot of time in the environment. The reason it's not higher than that is there is a lot of bugs in some of the traversing. Like one instance, I was trying to climb a mountain and I got on the first ledge and immediately got stuck. And the only way you could get undone is by rebooting the game. So wasn't a big fan of that. The combat in the game, not much new innovation. You just really added Viking weapons this time. A little lack in the character development kind of area in the beginning. The tutorial was long. I did like the fact you got to play like a cool board, like the board game in there, and they actually sell that on Amazon for you to play. I can't remember what it was. It's like some dice and stuff like that. But I mean, the side stuff allowed it to go up, but this is mainly the animations for the environment that got me going in there.
I gotta say, for Valhalla, kind of creeped up my list the more I played it. I made this list and I'm sticking to it, which brings me to my number 2, which you didn't play this, but I've got Assassin's Creed Rogue. I know it had a lot of shortcomings, and it was a short game because it felt more like a DLC. It was like 10 hours of gameplay compared to, Unity. And there wasn't a lot. You could tell all the budget went towards Unity because there wasn't a lot of newness to it, right? There wasn't a lot of innovation when it came to, the mechanics of it or the parkour. It was kind of copy and paste Black Flag and then in a new story and a new character. But that was one of the games where I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the gameplay. It was kind of like, a book you couldn't put down. Like I couldn't put down my controller. I want to know what happened next. And for those reasons, yeah, I had that at my number 2. That would be a game I would recommend for if people want a quick Assassin's Creed, story to play, I would recommend Rogue.
Okay. My number 2 was Origins. I can't really give too much on Rogue because I never played it, but mine was Origins because I got invested in the environment, the traversing all through Egypt, some of the historical monuments in there, and then the gameplay was long, and so you get invested into it. But my big favorite thing about that was the combat style. They finally introduced a new combat style, which I thought was amazing to have in the game. Get to customize different weapons, get to come out with heavy, light, daggers, all that stuff, and that's why that one's my number 2. Not really too much to say past that, besides the combat and environment.
I think
yep.
Origins was good, and you kind of like you were talking about the snow. It's the same kind of animations for sand to a certain extent, like not as deep as snow. Like you're not, walking through trenches of sand. But I thought it revolutionized a lot with that game, so I did enjoy Origins a lot. And like I said, those were ones that were kind of just creeped out of my top 3 lists, but I don't think there's going to be any surprises with either of our number ones. I think I already know yours.
I can go over mine really quick. It's pretty.
Yeah,
pretty
yours is yours Odyssey?
No, so mine was Assassin's Creed 3. And the main reason I liked it was the history. I got invested in the story. And I liked the traversing through the nature. This is where they started getting it to where you can start assassinating and not assassinating, but hunting some of the animals to get fur and trade that and make some income there. So I really enjoyed that. This was where it started adding the combat style of I don't have to be an assassin. I could be a brute. Odyssey would be an honorable mention for number 1. Thinking about it, the main thing the reason why it's not my number 1 is I felt they left out a lot of opportunities that would have got me more invested. Like if I picked a side, let me do world domination in the game and take over the entire island and not just be continuously battling and let the world reflect what I did. I think that's where not doing that, it really didn't make the mark of my top 3.
That's fair. It was the voice acting for me in Odyssey, but I'd say my number 1 is Black Flag. I know you don't like Black Flag, or you don't think it's worth the hype, but I really enjoyed this. I think it's the setting that made it, and kind of just the charisma and lack of care that Kenway as a character had that just made it really enjoyable. It wasn't as much, for the greater good or by the book or whatever. He was kind of like an anti-hero in a sense. And I think that kind of breathed new life into the traditional, like, because that's what this story, like, that's what all these games tend to be is, oh, someone from my, family was hurt by a Templar, or like, whatever, I need to make my mission now to become this master assassin to deal with it. So that's why Black Flag was my number 1. And the gameplay was fun. The naval combat was refined. The dual wield, I think it started in 3 with the tomahawks, but the dual wield swords was fun because I'm more of an offensive. Normally, Valhalla has taught me better, but normally I'll have 2 swords instead of a sword and a shield. But with Valhalla, I don't get very far. Doing that, I gotta have a shield. So yeah, that kind of rounds out. Say, was there any surprises from my side that kind of took you off guard?
No, the one was Rogue. I'm surprised with how short that game was. I didn't know that would be in your top 3.
it's kind of like a movie, right? Like you're used to all these, 2.5, 3 hour movies, good movies, good movies, good movies, and they're just like hidden gem that's like an hour and a half, and like you don't have a long time to play, or like going on vacation soon, you want to crank out a game real quick. Like it's just that underrated with Rogue. It's just a little 10 hours of gameplay. Like I'm not the type, I'm not going to go around finding all the Riddler trophies like with the Batman games or go find all, the doves or the pages or the whatever like completionist crap they put in there. Like no, I'm there for the story, the gameplay, and those are kind of my priorities when going into these sorts of games. But you're kind of like a somewhat of a history nerd. Which actually I'm surprised because you haven't played Syndicate. Now that I think about it, there's like I don't know how they explained it, but there's this like portal during the game you can jump into and you become an assassin during, I think it's during World War One for like a side quest kind of DLC, not DLC, but I think it might be DLC actually, but side quest thing where you go and like talk to Churchill and like all this stuff, like climb up the Eiffel Tower, and which was pretty neat. I think they could have fleshed that out more because that's the most modern assassin we've had that not many people kind of recognize. I forgot her name, so it's not like I can recognize her either. But you should definitely, at the least, check that out.
Yeah, I'll give it a check out. It'd be nice to have a cool modern assassin.
So with that, what we're all kind of looking forward to now, and this is a game where Assassin's Creed Shadows, the more I see, the more I like with it. And I know it's supposed to be out by now. And with these games, when I was younger, I was like, just give me the game. Like, I want the game. I hate these delays. But now you see so many unpolished games coming out that just have so many bugs and issues. Like Warhammer, I bought that, pre-ordered it and played it. And it just had server issues. And then you get into, I mean, more often than not, these games come out the gate and just fall flat on their face. But then you get into like Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, where I've had zero issues with it. It's been a great game from day one of release, and I had, I think, 3 days early access to it. So with them delaying Shadows, I'm good with it. And like I said, the more I see, the more I like about it. I was on the fence about getting it, on release day, but the more I think about it, the more I think I'm going to cave and end up buying it when it comes out.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit more. So, because I have some opinions on what they've been doing. So, for those who haven't been keeping up with the Assassin's Creed releases, so Assassin's Creed Shadows is the next release of the Assassin's Creed series, and is really set in the feudal Japan era. And basically, you're playing as two figures. I can't remember. Let's see if I can pronounce this guy's name. A historical figure, is it Oda? Historical figure Oda and Nobunaga. And basically, you go over that era, and based on the trailer, it's a samurai and a ninja. And for those who've seen it, the story kind of starts off with the ninja's villages get raided by the samurais, and she's trying to seek revenge on the feudal lords. And the samurai is also trying to get redemption for some stuff that's been happening in his era. So, yeah, I think that's my take on the development series of it. I've been following this closely because mainly the discussion hasn't been about the gameplay too much. It's been more about the delays and the errors in some of the development. I think, and we tweeted this and posted it on our Instagram last week. I think it was the best call for the developers to delay the game. For those who don't know why this was such a good call, is when the developers were building this game, they try to be as historically accurate as possible. And one of the big things is they released the trailers, and a bunch of people in Japan, mainly the Japanese government, came in and said, we will not publish this game in our country. And the reason is they got so many things incorrect from the historical accuracy of feudal Japan during that time. Because Japan is very proud about their culture. Super proud that if you make any mistakes, they will not release certain things in their area.
As they kind of should be. They've got a badass, like, kind of culture and, like, history Japan does. It's like, what a badass time to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, it really sucked. But
yeah, I mean, think about it. Like, and this is the first one where we start to get into modern type. I mean, Assassin's Creed 3 isn't more historical, like closer to modern, because I think that was like 1700s.
yeah,
This is based off in 1579 during that feudal era. So we're getting back to the modern day. Like we went back in Origins, we went back in Odyssey, so we went back in Valhalla. We went back in history, like back in time. So they're finally coming back to the modern time. And I think it's going to be exciting to see as they get the bugs fixed out and they improve their historically inaccuracy. It's going to be a fun game. I watched a couple play trailers, and I think what they added in the UI, the way the villagers respond to them walking in the areas, the fact that you get to swap between two characters during the game, and they're two different builds. That's the really fun part I like about it. Two different builds. The samurai is, of course, the character is this big black guy, because historically accurate, the guy who is in the game is a historical figure that got paraded around in Japan. So for those who don't know, I'll have to find the character's name, but the main character you play, the samurai, basically he was found by a Japanese guy in that era. And of course, back then you didn't really travel the seas as we do today. So like, we don't know as much about cultures as we do today because we have the ability to fly around. Well, this Japanese guy found this African man who was over 6 foot tall and gigantic. So he's like, oh my gosh, this is a feat. Like, look at this human. He's amazing. And he got paraded around Japan. So that's kind of who you're playing as, a samurai. And they do show that in the character. You are this giant man who is going around.
I think his name is Yasuke. Yasuke. You watch more anime than me, so you probably know how to pronounce. I'm just thinking, what's that guy's name? Yu Yu Hakusho?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I could be wrong. But yeah, you were right, because I know a lot of people had problems with that. They're like, oh, like, we wanted to see a Japanese, man, like, historically accurate. And I was like, And then I saw, like, the history behind it. I'm like, that's actually, like, they took a historically accurate character and implemented him into this game, which I thought was cool. It's the right way to do something like that. If you're gonna I don't want to consider it like a race swap. Like, yeah, the safe bet, which is to put like a random Asian, figure in there, because I'm sure there's a plethora to go from. But the fact that they kind of roll the dice on this, like, I think it's gonna end up paying off. And kind of like what I've seen about the game is, because Nagato is the female, I guess a shinobi. But so this is the first time they're gonna have two protagonists since Syndicate, where they had Jacob and Evie Fry, and they're gonna have these two, where Yasuke apparently his backstory is like he survived an attack on a slave ship that he was on and ended up in Japan in the service of like one of the high families, and they'll each have their own kind of unique abilities, in the sense that one is like for power and one will be for stealth, kind of like how Jacob and Evie Fry were. But from what I've seen, they're like, a big thing that I'm on board with is the animation. The parkour looks better. From like Valhalla, you can climb anything. You can climb like the side of a rock wall, whatever. In this game, they're like taking the time to make parkour pathways where you can go from like a city from like one side to the other and just follow this pathways, which is kind of reminiscent of the older Assassin's Creed games, especially like, Revelations, where you had the hook blade and you could like zip line across certain segments of the map, and like you could tell they put these like trails in there and they kind of got away from that, and now it feels like they're going back to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing it. I think setting, whether it's the political view or any specific views people have to decide with, like the character swap or how they did the game, I think they did their best they can to meet the demands of all their clients. But I'm glad they are adding taking a couple months step back, because this was supposed to be released in November, and I think it was supposed to be released before this is like their second delay. But I'm looking forward to playing this. They're taking the time to fix a lot of their errors based on customer feedback and based on, and that's why people have prototypes. I mean, this was out in betas and like has been beta tested and they got feedback. And I'm glad they're going to be updating the mechanics to bring back some of the Assassin's Creed feel for traversing, the combating, to where you get back into, as you play as the ninja, you're getting back more into how Assassin's Creed 1 through 3 were played, more stealthy, but then you get to be the samurai and you get to kind of have the same combat style as going through Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla.
I think they're just being very ambitious with this game, which is it's nice. Like this is something, I mean, since the Assassin's Creed games came out, like this is something the fans have wanted for a very long time. And they are taking their time to make sure they get it right. Because I think this is a big gamble for Ubisoft, because I don't think their games have been performing the way they've wanted. So this is a big deal for them. Like if this is I wouldn't be surprised if some of their smaller companies kind of get shut down if this game doesn't do well. I have high hopes for it, but we'll see what happens. And I mean, we'll probably do an episode in the future about it to kind of break down what our initial thoughts are in the game. Hopefully, try and get that out soon after the release. But yeah, I kind of want to. That kind of wraps up Assassin's Creed for us. This is a franchise that kind of started, adult gaming, started playing less on the Wii and more on the PlayStation and the Xbox 360 and all that with these games. So this is kind of nostalgia for me, such a long running series. And hopefully they do well in the future with this game coming out. We're going to be posting which I'll say it on here as well, posting what our next episode is going to be about Marvel Rivals that Chris and I have gotten into. It's kind of been a big deal in the gaming community. For those that want to know, follow us on socials at Two Dads One Controller, all spelled out, Instagram, X. We post there what our next episodes are going to be about. If you want to engage with us about what future episode topics we could do, we'd love to interact and kind of do what the people want to hear, because this is, as of right now, kind of a hobby for me and Chris, and we're kind of enjoying the ride as of now, but we want to get as much, feedback and kind of engagement with you guys as we can.
Yeah, and if you guys have any suggestions, please email us at 2dads1controller@gmail.com, and we can put a list together of episodes that you guys would like to listen to. And we'd appreciate all the feedback and suggestions you guys have out there.
Yeah, so till next time, tune in on Wednesdays for our episode release. And till next time, I'm Holden with Chris here, and hope you have a happy week gaming and doing what other nerd crap y'all like to do and we like to do.
All right, I'll cut it here.
Okay.